Hello everyone, this is Joe from Scarecrow Joe's Studio. Welcome back to part 3 of our paper mache evil snowman tutorial. And this final segment, we are going to cloth mache the hat, attach a cloth mached scarf. We're going to finish up the sculpt completely, and we're going to paint, and then we're going to seal. So let's get started. Alright, so tools and materials needed for this first little section on cloth macheing the top hat. You're going to need some paper mache paste. I just mix up some flour and water to a pancake-like batter consistency. And you're going to need some cloth. What I have here is an old sheet that I cut up. So of course you're going to need some scissors. So cloth and some scissors to cut up your sheet into various pieces. They don't have to be uniform. In fact, I encourage you to not try to make them all uniform. I've got various different sizes here, shapes, and I've got quite a good pile of it. There is nothing worse than getting partway through something like this and then coming to the realization that you do not have enough cloth. So, do make sure that you have more than what you think you're going to need, and then you should be fine. Alright, let's get started on cloth macheing the hat. Alright, this is not rocket science. I'm just taking one piece at a time of my cloth, dipping it into my paste. Kind of like, I'm just sort of squeegeeing it out so it's not completely goopy. And then just start laying it on. I do like to start from underneath the brim of the hat, and I just start laying it on. Go ahead and overlap them a little bit. Overlap your pieces of cloth on the hat. Make it look basically patchwork. So I'm just kind of, can't really see. I'll turn it over so that you could, or turn it around so that you could see it a little bit better here. Because I don't think I need to spend a whole lot of time showing you this technique. It's pretty simple. I'll just show you. Just sort of layering it on. Make sure you get underneath your hat here. Get up into these areas here. Sort of overlap them. Now I'm just kind of bouncing around from one section to another. You could certainly do that, not a big deal. Doesn't have to be on here perfect. He's a gnarly snowman. He's going to have a gnarly hat. Just showing you how I'm kind of just overlapping the pieces here so that they don't look uniform. So that's what you'll do. You're just going to go ahead and continue doing that till you've got cloth all over your cardboard hat. Alright, so there you have it. I spent the time and cloth mached my hat. One thing that I want to point out is along the brim here, you really want to make sure you get all that cardboard covered. If you have like a couple, spots where there is raw cardboard, that's not a big deal. This is going to be a big deal though, because when you go to paint this after it dries, if you don't have that raw cardboard covered, it's going to look exactly like that, raw cardboard. So do make sure that you get that covered all the way around. It's pretty goopy. The other thing that I'm going to do is I want a hat band for this guy. So I have cut a length of my sheet here. It's pretty thick, but I'm going to apply a hat band right around there. So I'm going to go ahead, dip it into my paste, squeegee it out. And I'm going to go ahead and give him a hat band. There we go, just like that. Kind of scrunching it a little bit so that it doesn't look too perfect, because I don't want it to look perfect by any means. Alright, now I've made a mess here. I've slopped paste all over my sculpture, so I'm just going to take a rag and wipe some of that off. If you have some on there that you miss, it's not going to be a big deal, but I like to wipe it off so that it's not just gooped on there. Alright, so we're at a point right now where we need to let this guy sit and dry completely. Probably going to take about 24 hours, and then we're done. We are going to go ahead and start the painting process. Before we do that, I'm going to go over tools and materials that you're going to need for the paint process, and that's coming up right after this guy dries completely. And I almost forgot, if you want to attach a scarf to your evil snowman, now's the time to do that too. So once again, I cut a strip of that sheet that I was working with, and I'm going to just go ahead and dip it into my paste, squeegee that out, and wrap it around his neck, and it will dry pretty solid. So here we go. I'm gonna just put like a fake little knot. Something like that, and then go ahead and position your scarf the way that you want it. And we're going to go ahead, and once again, we're going to go ahead and let this dry completely before we can move on to painting. Alright, so we are at the point here where everything is dry and we are ready to start painting. But let's quickly go over tools and materials needed for the paint and sealing segment here. You're obviously going to need some paint brushes. I have a variety of chip brushes in different sizes. I have a little container bowl here that I'm going to use to put some of my paint in. Basically, I have a color scheme of 3 colors. I'm going to use white primer. This is a white latex primer. I have a big bucket of it because I use a lot of it. You don't have to go out and buy a big bucket. You can pick up a small color sample paint and primer mix of white. That'll work for you. And then I have black. And again, I use a lot of black paint, so I have a gallon of it. You do not need to have a gallon of it. You can go ahead and get a container about this size or something like that, whatever you prefer. And then this is my other color choice that I have chosen, and I'm going to paint the hat band this color and the scarf. This is a burnt sienna acrylic, Nothing fancy, nothing special. You can use whatever colors that you want for your hat band, your scarf. That's just the color that I'm going to choose. And then I have a other variety of paint brushes on hand just in case, so I could get in these tighter areas and paint these teeth here. And I'll probably use like an off-white, and kind of yellow up these teeth a little bit. And then what I suggest here, and as you recall, before we applied the hat, we cut a hole in the back of the head of this snowman to insert a light. So easiest thing to do, and honestly, you don't even really have to paint the inside of it. It'll be fine without any paint. I like to paint the inside of it, but you could just leave it the raw newspaper inside there. That's fine. But if you do want to paint the inside of it, I suggest picking a color, whether it's going to be red or black or yellow or whatever, and get a can of spray paint and spray paint in here first. Spray paint the inside first before you start doing any of the other painting. That's going to be easier than trying to get a paintbrush with paint in there, which is what I'm going to do. And the reason that I'm going to do that is because it's snowing outside. I cannot take this thing outdoors and spray paint because of the weather. So I'm going to struggle, and I'm going to use paint and a paintbrush to try to get in there as best I can. And then after it's all said and done and dry, the last thing that I'm going to do is seal it with a fast-drying polyurethane. This is a clear satin. If you want it to be glossy, then get a gloss, but I prefer the clear satin. I suggest that you seal your sculpture with some polyurethane, whether it's going to be an indoor sculpture or an outside sculpture. It will protect it from moisture, protect it from dust. You can easily clean it off with a lightly damp rag, which you would not be able to do if you didn't seal it, because it would just remove the paint. So this is the step we're at now. We're going to go ahead and start painting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the inside of the best I can. You guys don't really need to watch that. And then I'll come back and I'll show you the next steps for painting with the white, painting with the black completely. And then we'll go over it, dry brush it with some white. So that's coming up next. Alright, so I got in there as best I could with my paint and paintbrush. I ended up using the burnt sienna acrylic, the same paint color that I'm going to use for the hat band and the scarf. But you can use, like I said, you can use whatever color that you want. And if you're in a well-ventilated area, it's always easier to use a can of spray paint. Before I move on here with doing any paint, what I did was I applied masking tape around my wooden arms to avoid getting paint on those. I want them to maintain or retain that natural wood look as much as possible. So I've protected them with some masking tape. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I have my black acrylic paint here, starting on the head. My hat is going to be completely black, but I'm going to try to avoid getting black paint on my hat band. But I'm going to go ahead and paint for the most part, with the exception of the hat band and the scarf. I'm going to paint the entire sculpture black. And then once that dries, I'm going to go in with my white primer, paint and primer mix, and I'm going to dry brush white over the body, the face, I'm going to paint, including the very bottom or base of him is also going to be painted and primered as well. And I do have, I don't know if you've noticed, but I do have a sheet of plastic that I've used to cover my table here to protect it. It's pretty inevitable you're going to end up getting some paint on your scarf. You're going to get some paint on your teeth. Alright, I had to pause because I realized that I did not put masking tape over my little wooden nose there. So I got black paint on it and I wiped it off as best as I could and applied some of the masking tape over that to protect it now. So you're going to go ahead, carry on, get the whole thing based out in black. And we'll let that dry, and then we'll come back and dry brush the white primer. Alright, so I have blocked this all out in black. I did end up getting a bunch of black on my scarf. That's not a big deal. And I'm going to have to do some cleanup around these areas here because I did get a little bit of black on the hat band. Again, not a big deal. But now the next step here is to dry brush some white primer on the head and the body of our snowman. I have a 1-inch, this is just a cheap 1-inch chip brush, and I've trimmed it down. I like to do that for dry brushing. But this is the brush I'm going to use. I have some of my white primer here. And then you can use a shop towel, a paper towel, or even a piece of newspaper. But you're going to need something to knock off your paint with for dry brushing. So I'm using, in this case, I'm going to use a blue shop towel. Now, this is a pretty easy process here. I'm going to start basically on the back. I'm going to start on the back here. I recommend that you do start on the back before moving to the front. And I'm just getting some paint, some of that primer on my paintbrush, knocking off most of it. I'm going to start down here, and I'm just going to start dry brushing. Now I'm going to dry brush, and I'm going to keep doing this until I have the desired amount of white over this black paint. I do want some of the black to shine through. He is an evil snowman. But that's going to be completely up to you on how much of the black you want to come through. So you may end up dry brushing twice, or maybe 3 times. But that's what I'm going to keep on doing here, and I'll speed it up for you as well. Alright, so you just saw me speed that up and dry brush the body. Now I'm going to just move on to the face here. Again, same concept. And I am getting some paint, as you can see, up on the underneath of my hat. I'm going to have to go in and clean that up with some black paint. I think I'm going to just kind of there's a little bit of the dry brush that got in the cutouts here of my eye holes. Not a big deal. I'm just going to sort of not force paint in there. I'm just going to kind of let it fall to black. Same with like the inside lip, bottom lip and top lip area. As you can see, I did end up going back over with some more of my white primer on this guy. He was just a little too dark. There's a little too much of the black coming through. But, I mean, whatever your personal preference is. So this is pretty much how he came out. Now, if you want to get a little more creative, you can take a very, very light blue paint, tiny bit, and you could dry brush in strategic areas very lightly, not all over the whole thing, just in strategic areas, maybe where it's a little bit more raised or recessed areas, like maybe around here, underneath here a little bit, and you can take that very light blue paint and hit those areas just a little bit, and it will give it the illusion of basically ice. You know, sometimes ice has like a bluish tint to it. So that is something that I have done in the past with some of mine. I'm not going to do this on that guy, on this guy here. I like the way he looks just the way he is. A couple of other things that I'm going to go ahead and do now. First is I'm going to paint my hat band and my scarf this burnt sienna color here. That's what I'm going to go ahead and do next. I still have some of it, and I'm going to try not to slop paint onto my snowman, so this is going to be pretty tedious. I don't think it's something that you need to watch me do, but that's what I'm going to go ahead and do once I'm done with the scarf. Oh, I really like that color. That's a cool color. But again, you can use whatever color you prefer. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and do this scarf, and then once the scarf is done, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to paint the hat band same color. Here you have it. Painted the scarf, the hat band. Now I only put one coat on those areas. If you feel the need, when it dries, go back over it, hit it with another coat. I'm not going to bother doing that. I think it's going to be fine the way it is. I don't want it to look too new. He is an evil snowman. And then after that, I went in with a little bit of black paint, and I cleaned up underneath the hat brim where I got some of the dry brush white on there. And then I cleaned up around the edge of the hat band, and I did notice that there were some little areas where I didn't get the black paint on the hat. So I went over with that, touched that up. And then if you remember correctly, the same polymer Sculpey clay, oven baked clay that I used to create the teeth, I also used for like the little coal buttons, and I went in and I painted those black as well. So he is pretty much done. The only thing that needs to happen is once he is completely dry, he's going to get sprayed with a coat of the Minwax fast drying polyurethane clear satin, and I'm also going to spray on the inside of him the cutouts as well. But before I do any of that, I have this sunset or golden sunset yellowish acrylic paint, and I think I just really want to just take a little bit of it. I have a little bit of it on my shop towel here, and I'm just gonna hit the teeth. I want those to stand out a little bit more. And if I think it's too bright after it dries, I could go over with a little bit of white. But yeah, he's got some gnarly looking teeth. Jack the Ripper Frost is what I'm calling him. Yeah, I like that. I'm going to leave that as it is. I'm going to go ahead and remove the tape from the nose and around the arms here. Alright, so I removed the tape from the nose. Bring him up a little closer. Remove the tape from the nose. As you remember correctly, before I applied masking tape to the arms, the wooden arms, before I started painting. And then, regrettably, I forgot to put masking tape over the nose. So I wiped it off as best as I could, the black paint that got on there. But it still looks pretty good. I kind of like it. There is some, so this white here, this is not paint that's on the arms. That's my, that was my paste, paper mache paste. I'm going to leave that. I don't care about that. I think it does make it look a little bit more organic. Maybe like some bird poop or something like that. But yeah, he's done. I just have to wait for him to dry completely, and then he's good to go. Just one last thing. Before you seal your sculpture, I would wait at least 24 to 48 hours for it to dry completely. So that way you can be sure that you're not trapping in any moisture into your clay at all. So do make sure that it is completely dry. I personally am not going to have a choice but to wait that long because I need to wait for the weather to clear. I don't have a space, like a garage space or anything like that, and I don't use any kind of aerosols or anything like that inside my little home-based studio. I always do that outside. So because the weather is bad, I have to wait. But anyway, I'm pleased with him. I like the way he turned out, and this is going to conclude our tutorial on the evil snowman. Thank you for following along. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. And before I say goodbye, I'm going to wait for it to get a little dark, turn off some lights, and then show you what it looks like when I insert a light into his head here. But that's it. That's a wrap for this video. Again, thank you for watching, and if you haven't already subscribed, please hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next one.